although it's already been mentioned by one of our the guys right here that it literally takes 7 seconds for a recruiter to decide if they're going to take you or not. Short and simple. Less is more. Now, when listing your qualifications, it is important to start with your most recent qualifications. With work experience, you will do the same thing that you've done with your qualifications. It is important to list your most recent work experience. You don't necessarily have to start with what you've been doing in 2014, 2012, and so forth. You can start with what you've been doing in 2020 or 2021. And you can then list your other job experiences. You will hardly find a person who doesn't have any work experience. You just need to look at what you've done, think back at the things that you've done, take those things and formalize them and list them out on your CV. Well, thank you for that introduction. I'm not gonna waste any of your time. I'm just gonna go straight into it. I'm gonna switch off my camera. Therefore, please give me a clear indication if you guys can see my screen.
Yes, we can. Yes, we
okay,
can.
Thank you.
CV writing guide.
All right. So, we've heard, or rather, rumor has it, that once you have a perfect CV, that's all that you need to get a job. Some people say that the more colorful it is, the greater your chances of getting a job. None of those notions are necessarily true or false. I'm rather here to tell you that your CV will only get you 50% into landing your best gig. So, what is a CV? A CV is a summary of the story of your life. This includes your career. This includes your education, your personal profile, the experience that you've gained throughout working, and lastly, any achievements that you might have that you feel are relevant to the job that you're applying for. Now, one thing you need to know is that whenever you apply for any job anywhere else, your CV is literally competing against so many CVs. Although it's already been mentioned by one of the guys right here that it literally takes 7 seconds for a recruiter to decide if they're going to take you or not. That is one of the, should I say, sad parts about HR or the recruitment business. We literally receive a lot of CVs, and unfortunately, we do not necessarily have the time to go through each and every CV. You need to understand as an applicant that you are not the only person that's applying for that job. So it is up to you to make sure that you ensure that your CV really stands out. Now, how do you make sure that your CV stands out? The type of layout that you use makes a difference. If you're going to have titles on your CV, make sure that those titles are bold and easy for one to read. If you're going to list out things on your CV, ensure that you use bullet points. And as for the sentences that you write on your CV, please ensure that they're very short in order to save time. Because, mind you, it really takes 7 seconds for us to decide if you're going to be a successful candidate or not. Now, what is it that you need to do to make sure that you have a well-written CV? It's easy. Just kiss. And I'm not talking about the other kissing, so you can get your mind out of the gutter. What I'm talking about is you need to ensure that you keep it short and simple. Less is more. So as much as you've got so much information that you'd like to fill out in your CV, sometimes writing less information actually does the trick. Although you're going to keep it as less as possible, you need to ensure that the information that you're putting on that CV is relevant. And not only is it relevant, but it is job specific and you are mindful of the content and context of it. Now, the first thing that I'm going to discuss with you guys is your personal or your professional profile. Truth be told, this is a very common debate amongst the people in recruitment, because you've got those recruiters that don't necessarily focus on it, and you also have those that focus on it. I personally am in between. It all depends on the numbers of CVs that I've received for a job. For instance, I've had a situation wherein I've advertised a job and I received 800 CVs. And out of those 800, I had to pick out at least 2 candidates. That can't be easy. So at times, reading your personal profile might not be preferable in that instance. Now, should you decide to include that in your CV, you need to ensure that whatever you write sells all the skills that you have. You need to ensure that it highlights your position or your career stage. Now, let me give you an example of how you can write a professional or a personal profile that isn't too long. You can choose to say that you're an HR administrator seeking employment with skills in recruitment, administration, IR, and payroll. Or you could decide to personalize it and say, I am an HR administrator seeking employment in your department. My skills are recruitment, administration, IR, and payroll. Now, I've put up a picture on your screen right now that says personal profile, and the things that are listed on it. With what I've defined a personal profile as and what you're seeing right now aren't necessarily the same. This is why it's a huge debate between personal profile versus your skills. You need to ensure that you don't confuse those two things. Yes, you may write your personal profile and include some of your skills, but do not make it just about your skills. So how then can you write this out? Let me give you examples of how you can write your personal profile. So here's an example. You can either say, I am a highly organized, dedicated, and diplomatic HR officer with proven ability to improve work environments and a commitment to employee welfare. Sensitive to employee concerns, I possess strong interpersonal skills, demonstrating the utmost discretion and integrity when dealing with confidential information. I am proficient in business, reflecting in familiarity with payroll systems and employment law. Now, when you look at this personal profile that I've just put out right now, this person has indicated some of the skills that they have. They've told you the role that they currently possess at this moment in time as a job seeker. You can already see that they're a human resource officer. And also, not only did they mention the skills that they have, but they've told you some of the things that they know how to do where the job is concerned, and that is the payroll systems and employment law. So when you look at this type of CV, before you even go into detail, you kind of already have an idea of the type of candidate that you're dealing with. This also is a second example.
Salani?
Yes?
Yes. No, I just wanted to indicate that it seems like we're having a challenge with the chat function on the meeting. So I wanted to encourage everyone to just raise their hand. And do you prefer taking questions at the end, or people can just interject in between?
They can interject in between, but then I will have sections wherein I will ask them to ask me questions.
Okay. So since you're presenting, I'll give you the hands. Whenever I see hands, I'll let you know.
No problem.
Thank you.
Okay. So as I was saying, the second example mirrors the first one as well. You can already see the person's title. You know the type of skills that they have. They've mentioned the fact that they've done project management, and they know how to deal with multiple projects, and they know how to prioritize. So both these candidates did not just mention skills, and they also did not just mention the fact that they do a certain role. They've combined the two, which is what I advise you to do should you decide to have a template that includes a personal profile. The next thing that I'm going to discuss is your education or qualifications. Now, when listing your qualifications, it is important to start with your most recent qualifications. I understand that, yes, before you would have had your degree or certificate and so forth, you would have had your grade 12. When it comes to CV, it should be the other way around. We need to see your highest qualifications or whatever it is that you have currently, and then you can then list the rest of your qualifications. And that could be your degree, your diploma, the certificates that you have, and any vocational training received. Now, what do I mean by the vocational training received? You've got those people that didn't necessarily go to institutions like universities or technicons, but rather have gone to programs or have done programs where they've been upskilled with skills like, for instance, bricklayering. That kind of qualification might not come from a university like VETS and so forth, but it is a qualification. It is something that somebody has trained you for, and you are qualified to do it. So should you have anything like that, you need to list it under your qualifications. And once again, when it comes to listing your qualifications, if you are somebody who has a lot of qualifications in different streams, in different fields, please ensure that the qualifications that you list first are job relevant. Here's an example. You could be somebody who studied law or accounting and also have a qualification as a chef or in hospitality. If you're going to be looking for a job at a place like KPMG, as much as you have a qualification in being a chef or in hospitality, that qualification isn't really job relevant in terms of KPMG. They would want to know if you've got your accounting degree or your BCom degree and so forth, depending on the job that you're applying for. So yes, it is good to have a lot of qualifications, but at the same time, it doesn't necessarily look good if you're going to be applying for a specific job and you've already filled out your CV with information that isn't that relevant in that context. So should you decide to list your qualifications, please be mindful of the job, be mindful of the space that you have on your CV. Now, here's examples of how you can list your qualifications depending on the milestone you are at in your life. This is an example of a graduate or somebody who has just finished with their studies. Now, I'll start from the bottom. You can already see their grade 12 results. You can see the subjects that they've done. They've listed the fact that under history, they got a B, geography A, English B. And in terms of their degree, you can already see the relevant modules that they have listed. Now, if you're going to have a CV that's written in this format, and let's just say you're looking for an internship, it is very important for you to look at the job spec or the advert and look at the subjects that you've decided to list. Yes, of course, it takes for you to graduate a 3-year or 4-year degree, you would have done a lot of modules. But it wouldn't be necessary for you to list all of those subjects, more especially if you're going to attach your supporting documents. So, for instance, if you're going to be working, let's say you've applied for an internship at the Department of Social Development, for example, or you want to work with social workers and so forth. Listing a subject like poverty, class, and inequality could be helpful because when they look at your CV and they look at the job spec and the environment in which you're applying for, they can go like, oh, okay, so Salani has done a module that will help her understand the fact that people come from different circumstances. There are those who come from poverty-stricken homes and there are classes in society. Therefore, this kind of candidate might be sympathetic with the type of people that we work with in this department. Now, if you're going to list, like I said, subjects, please make sure that they are context specific. Be mindful of the job that you're applying for. With the second example, this is also a student who is applying for either a job or to be accepted into honors. So you can already see what they've done in high school. You can already see that, fine, they have a national diploma and probably they want to do their BTech. Now, most of the people would have probably applied and probably they don't have your P1, P2 experience and so forth. But as an applicant, you would want to do something that's a little bit different and tweak it. And tweak your CV to look different from any other CV. Because mind you, you are literally competing against a lot of people. So if you want to mention the mark that you've gotten in your in the relevant subjects, you can do so if that is what you need to do to stand out. The third example as well mirrors the other two examples. Now, this is a person who has done obviously their high school or grade 12. You can already see the marks there. It's a B, a C, B's, and A's. And also, the student decided to also mention only the subjects that are relevant to what they're applying for and also the subjects in which they got distinctions for. So when you look at this type of CV, you can already see that you're dealing with a type A type of student. So you really need to tweak your CV according to the type of person that you are, what you've done, and also try to make a difference. Now I'm going to give you a moment to just look at that meme. And that should already tell you the next thing that I'm going to discuss. Experience. With work experience, you will do the same thing that you've done with your qualifications. It is important to list your most recent work experience. You don't necessarily have to start with what you've been doing in 2014, 2012, and so forth. You can start with what you've been doing in 2020 or 2021. And you can then list your other job experiences. When you list your experience, ensure that you indicate the duration or the period in which you worked in each and every company that you're going to list, whether it's months or years. Most importantly, you need to ensure that you've listed your performance duties. Now, these duties can entail the experience that you've gotten from that place, any key learnings that you feel you need to elaborate on, the exposure that you could have gotten in that role or in that position, whether it's the type of training that you've done that will make you different from any other candidate, and lastly, reasons for why you have left the company. Sometimes listing out the reasons can be a good thing. Sometimes it's as if you're shooting yourself on the foot And I'll explain why I'm saying that. There are times wherein, as recruiters, we look at a CV and you see that this person has worked at this place for a year, and then they've worked at this other place for 2 months, 3 months, and so forth. So in those situations, if you're going to list your reasons of why you're leaving, and the recruiter has to analyze that CV, you might look like a job hopper. Now, this now becomes different if you're going to list your reasons as, for instance, saying that your contract has ended or you've been retrenched and things like that. Now, if you've been retrenched or if your contract has ended 1 or 2 times, it can be something that some recruiters can overlook. But if you're going to list, for example, 5 jobs, and in all those 5 jobs, you keep saying your reasons of leaving are that your contract has ended. As much as you're being honest with the recruiter to say, look, I left here because my contract ended, at times it makes a recruiter question themselves to say, why is it that you can't keep your jobs? Is it because there's something that you're just not doing right? Or is it unfortunate on your part that those companies cannot afford to keep you? So depending on who your CV has, like on the laps that your CV has ended on, you can have a recruiter who will be intrigued and decide to give you an opportunity. And you have those that will unfortunately look at those reasons and go like, you know what, I don't think this person is able to keep employment. So when you look at your work experience, like I've mentioned, it comes from different learnings and different things, whether it's trainings that you've had, whether it's the stepping stones that you've come across in life, any networking, anything can form part of your work experience, and I will explain this part. Now, we have candidates, unfortunately, who like playing the guessing game. Now, I'm going to show you 2 different types of pictures. Now, with the first one, this candidate has shown us, yes, the name of the company that they've worked for, the position is there, the duration, and the reasons for leaving, which is fine. The second candidate has done that as well, to mention the company, the position, and the period. But when you look at both these pictures, there's something that's missing from it, and that is the duties for both of them. So when you have a CV that looks like this, for instance, and you've just mentioned the things that you can see on your screen right now, but you've omitted your key duties or your performance duties, unfortunately, you're leaving the recruiter sitting there and guessing and wondering why you have applied for the job. Mind you, you know your CV, you know the work experience that you've done, but I, as the recruiter, don't know why you feel you are suitable for the job that I've advertised. So if you don't list your key duties, I won't know as a recruiter, or recruiters out there won't know whatever it is that you have that is suitable for the job. So it is important to list your key duties. Now, this is an example of a CV wherein a candidate or an applicant has given us the job title, they've told us where they've worked, the period, the achievements within that role, and also the key duties. The next picture also comes from one of the CVs that I've received recently. Now, this is correct, right? I mean, this person has listed what they've done, and there's nothing wrong with it. At least when you look at the CV, you know that, okay, fine, this is what the person has done. But unfortunately, when it looks like this, it is not easy on the eye. So a recruiter might decide that, you know what, it's 4 o'clock already. I've been looking at CVs the whole day. Unfortunately, I won't be able to go through all these bullet points, which is the truth. because like I've said, we handle a lot of CVs and there's a lot of competition between applicants. Now, if you're gonna list your key duties, please ensure that you subdivide them like this person has done on the CV. You can see that this person has decided to say, okay, they've given you the date, they've given you the role that they currently possess. And now when it comes to the key duties, what they've done is they've subdivided all the key duties according to subheadings. You can already see this project coordination and management. And then they've listed whatever it is they've done under that subheading. If it's administrative work, they've done the same thing. So can you see the difference between this CV that has the listed duties, yes, versus this one that still has the same listed duties, but then the difference between the two is that one decided to group all the things that are done versus this one who's just decided to list them all. Now, before I continue, are there any questions? Okay.
Just to remind our audience that you would need to raise your hand or you can to be recognized to speak. Like we said earlier, we're having a challenge with our chat function.
All right. Now, the next thing I'm going to address is what I call informal work experience. Now, what do I mean by informal work experience? I'm talking about any type of work that you could have done through participating in something like projects, for example. For instance, this might be work that you've done as a secretary for the youth at your church. This might be any sales promotions that you've done. This might be events management or coordination. Or for instance, you're a grade 12 learner or you've been a grade 12 learner and you were part of the metric dance committee. Or if you're into sports, you've been the captain of your sports team, whether be it basketball, netball, and so forth. What I'm trying to say is that you will hardly find a person who doesn't have any work experience. You just need to look at what you've done, think back at the things that you've done, take those things and formalize them and list them out on your CV. So for instance, when we look at this program that we're in right now, or this workshop that we're busy with right now, somebody had to do the coordination. Somebody had to advertise and things like that. Now, if you are such a person, you can't necessarily say that you don't have experience because whatever it is that was done in the background for us to find ourselves sitting this way is work experience for somebody. So if you've been involved in such things, like I've said, whether it's the youth and all those things that you have done, you might not have done them in a formal organization or a company that is recognized or known. But fact is, we cannot take that away from you and not call it experience. So look at your life, think back at the things that you've done, and see what you can take from it and what you can include on your CV if you haven't worked as yet. Or even if you have been working and you don't necessarily have a lot of years of experience, you can use all the informal work experience to form part of your work experience as a whole. Now, there might be somebody there in the audience thinking, oh my gosh, Sadi, I haven't worked ever in my life. You've mentioned projects and youth and metric dance and all those things, and I've never even been involved in those things. All I did was go to school, come back to school, minded my own business and so forth, and I don't have any work experience. What do I do in that situation? Well, I'm here to tell you not to worry. I will tell you exactly what you need to do to make sure that your CV stands out and at least has content that you can use to sell yourself. So what you need to do is to highlight your key strengths. There's nobody who doesn't have strengths. It doesn't matter the type of person that you are. Everybody has a strength. There's something that you're good at. Now what you need to do is highlight all those key strengths or the soft skills that you have. Examples of the soft skills would be communication, whether be it teamwork, time management, or organizing. I know usually what candidates do is whenever they're writing up their CV, when it comes to soft skills, they usually tend to Google and say, Google, what soft skills can you give me? And whatever they find there, they just write off and say, look, I've got leadership skills, I've got, teamwork and all those things. Now, if you come across a recruiter like me who might decide in an interview to say to you, give me an instance where you've shown teamwork, that will come as shocking and surprising to you if you really don't have that skill. So now what do you do when you don't have experience to write, whether it's formal or informal? What you do is you take those soft skills that you have or those strengths that you're good at and you write them out. Write a sentence or two, just like you see on this example, and emphasize on the instances that helped you gain those soft skills. If it's teamwork, you need to mention how, if you're a student, how working in a group for a group assignment helped you with your teamwork skills. If it's organizing or time management, you need to give an instance where you had to really manage your time. And if it's communication, if you had to do a presentation or something like that, or be somebody who was relating with groups or different people, you need to write all those key skills and all the strengths that you have and not send a CV that is blank. You cannot sabotage yourself like that. So everybody has a weakness. Everybody has a soft skill. There's that one thing or two things that you're good at. If you don't have experience, informal or formal, go for your soft skills. Highlight your soft skills and you will be fine. Now I'm going to move to a topic about technology and how it has changed the recruitment space. Now, AI stands for artificial intelligence. Now, what we use technology for in the human resource industry, we use it for talent search. The reason why we do that is because it increases productivity. Like imagine the instance or the scenario that I gave you wherein I had to look at 800 CVs. Usually we have deadlines. A client will be telling you that, look, I need this position to be filled by next week, Wednesday, or you're at your job and they tell you that whosoever has resigned and you really need to fill that role. So in order to increase productivity, we have no choice but to turn to technology or artificial intelligence. It also helps us with online testing. And it is one of the fastest ways of recruiting. Now, part of these technologies that we use, we have something called an applicant tracking system. Now, what this is, for instance, I know some of you guys have probably registered with one or two sites. You've registered your CVs with, one or two companies. Now, those systems that they are using right there is the applicant tracking system. So what happens is you put in your details, you log in your details there, and it will be saved automatically. And let's say in this company X, somebody decides to resign. If we have your CV on the system and we have the relevant recruitment technology in that company, instead of us advertising the old-fashioned way and all those things, we can just turn to that system and look for applicants that are relevant for that role, and that's wherein you find yourself getting a random call from a company that you applied for, let's say 2 or 3 years ago. So they would have gotten your CV or picked up your CV using this type of systems. We also use technology for CV screening. Like I said, unemployment is high in SA. A lot of people are looking for jobs. So sometimes to find the best CVs or find people that are suitable for roles, we have to use technologies that will help us find the relevant candidates. Now, also, it helps us with assessments. For instance, if you've applied for a job using a site such as Indeed, there are times wherein you find maybe a pop-up message or a pop-up email saying that the recruiter would want you to probably take a test, whether it's Excel, whether it's based on your soft skills, whether it's based on your knowledge on SAP and things like that. So technology helps us in the sense of shortlisting before bringing people into the company, without having to do that exercise of probably calling 10 people and you find that out of the whole 10 people, only 1 or 2 people know how to use SAP. So in order to avoid that, what recruiters do right now is when they put out a job advert on sites like Indeed, PNet, and so forth, they then include a test and tell the system to only notify them once they've found a candidate that is probably, let's say, scored 50% on the test, or somebody who meets all the requirements. We use the systems for matching, onboarding processes. That's when you've gotten the job. Instead of you filling up a lot of paperwork, most companies are using technology for that now. Recruitment marketing in terms of advertising, sourcing individuals, like I've mentioned. So if I had to use an example with one of the sites that are well known, that would be PNet. For instance, you can use, let's say I'm looking for somebody who is a picker or a loader in the world or in the field of logistics. What I can do is I can just go onto that PNet system and type in the keyword loader or picker. So every CV, and I can also choose the area as well. So every CV that has that word that is within the area and whatever criteria that I've selected will automatically pop up, which makes recruitment life easy. There's also video recruitment, and that is now super popular right now because of COVID-19 and some regulations that we need to follow. So recruiters are now doing a lot of Skype interviews, whether be it using Teams or Zoom, for instance. So we use technology to ease up things. Next up, I'm going to show you different formats or templates that people use for their CVs. This is an example of one wherein you see the person's personal details on the left-hand side and everything that's got to do with the experience on the right-hand side. And if you look at the top there, you can already see their profile or personal profile outlined there in just a few sentences. They've made sure that they've mentioned the fact that they've been working for 10 years in the IT department and they know IT strategies. So you can already have a sense of the type of candidate that you're going to be dealing with should you decide to recruit this person. Then again, we have this template wherein people include pictures. I cannot stress how important it is for one to use a professional picture. Trust you or believe you in me when I tell you that we have candidates that put up pictures that should be sent to the other gender, depending on whichever gender you are. pictures that are just not meant for a CV. You find, I've once seen a picture of a person sitting on their chair, slanting and holding a glass of something, and you decide as a candidate to put that on your CV. As much as you would want to show me as a recruiter that, hey, I have a social life. After that 7 to 5, I have a life. Yes, we understand. You're human and all that, but you wouldn't want to put something like that on your CV. So should you decide to use a template that needs you to put up a picture, please take a professional picture or get a good quality phone or camera and get somebody to take a proper picture of you, and be mindful of your dress code as well, should you decide to use that type of template. These are 2 more templates or styles or layouts that you could use. The one on my right hand side would be more relevant. I would think that a person who would do something like this is somebody who's probably in the graphic designing industry. For instance, if you were a student of graphic designer or that type of world, architecture and all those things, I'd expect you to, if you want to stand out, have a CV that looks like this. I mean, I personally, if I was to receive a CV like this, I am definitely going to call you in for an interview. This is memorable. There's no way that you can forget a CV that looks like this. So guys, what I'm trying to say is that your CV needs to be memorable. Look at the state of your CV right now. Try to think of it. And I'll ask you this. If it happened that we were to take your CV and put it on a billboard right now, is it a fair representation of you? Does that CV represent you well? Will you be able to look at your CV and say, yes, that is me, with no doubt? Or are you going to be in a situation wherein you'll be asking yourself what got over you when you typed that CV? But do not worry. That is why we're having this course or this workshop, so that you can be well informed, so that you can know the mistakes, the common mistakes that are made with CVs, so that you can go and brush up and get all the help that you need. Are there any questions thus far?
Yes, Salani. Quick question from my side. I also see a hand from Mahlatsi, so I'll just allow Mahlatsi to go first.
Okay.
Mahlatsi?
Oh, okay. Thank you so much, Salani. Well, right now, as you are moving on to the CV templates and that stuff, and the ATS, I just wanted to find out, because I want to read somewhere that they're saying there are ATS-friendly resumes. So I just wanted to find out that all the points that you've been giving unto us, are those one of the things that we need to consider, or there are still more things that you need to consider for you to have an ATS-friendly CV? Because you might have a good CV for what do you call it, maybe hand deliveries or face-to-face submissions, but only to find that when it comes to the ATS system, your CV is not competent enough, and the system ends up rejecting it before it gets to the recruiter.
Okay. So, honestly, what matters most, more especially when it comes to systems, is having the right keywords where your content is concerned. I'll give you an example. Let's say I'm looking for a transport controller in the logistics field who has knowledge of SAP, who has knowledge of using the telemetrics system for tracking, who has knowledge in Excel, for instance. When this person decides to write down their key duties, if they do not mention, let's say, SAP, Excel, like I've mentioned, or telemetrics, they've just decided to say, I know how to use tracking systems. if I've inputted on the ATS system that I am looking for any CV that has the word telemetrics, Excel, and SAP, let's say those are the 3 requirements. If that candidate didn't mention things like that, the system won't be able to pick it up. So it is not mostly about the CV's layout in itself, but it's the content that will also help the system to pick out whatever it is that it was sent to go and look for. Mahlatse, I don't know if you answered.
Yes, I'm answered. Thank you.
Okay. There was another question.
Oh yes, I think my question was related to
that as well.
Mahlatse's question. Yeah,
yes.
Since you spoke about the technology and the use of that technology within the recruitment space. Yes.
Yeah. So it's not as if the system is looking for a CV that has 5 lines or a CV that starts with profile and then work experience and all those things. The content will drive the very same way that I would have been as a human being, regardless of artificial intelligence, the very same way that I would have been attracted to your CV based on, the keywords that you've used. And, I need to look at your CV, read it, think about my organization and go like, yes, this person is a perfect fit. Definitely, I'm calling them. That is what the system does. So it's more or less the same thing.
We also have another question from Mwako Muremi.
Okay. Mwako, you can go ahead. Mwako? Mwako, are you on mute? Mwako? Okay, I'm gonna move on and
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Oh, okay. Mwako?
Sir, am I audible?
Can hear you.
Oh yeah. So my question is around making use of keywords. I'm assuming what I will do is based on whatever advertisement of the post, I'll identify whatever keywords that are critical there, and then I'm going to use those words in my CV. So my question is the implication of me trying to cheat the system, knowing that they need people that have this I get to use those words in order to cheat the system, only to find that that's not necessarily the case. So usually, what are the implications, or how often do you guys find people that are doing that? And should somebody decide to do that, what are usually the repercussions?
Very often. I mean, we see it every day, regardless of whether you use a system to recruit or not. Even in a company that doesn't use systems, we have candidates that will walk in with a CV that is 3 pages long. You sit down with them and you say, okay, fine, let's discuss your work experience at company X. What were you doing there? You find that they mentioned 3 things. You go to company Y, they mention 2 things. You ask them about something that's written on the CV, and they go, I can't remember, or it was a long time ago. Such things. So it's not even about the system in itself. Yes, you'll be able to cheat the system to get your interview, but depending on the person who's interviewing you and the panel, if you're lucky enough to get a panel that is going to be lenient with you and go like, no, we understand, you are nervous and all those things, it's understandable, then okay, I guess you'll get the job. But if you're going to come across a recruiter who will scrutinize each and everything and go like, no man, Mwako, you mentioned the fact that you know how to handle projects. Tell me, what are the steps of handling a project? Mwako, you're going to be shocked. You won't know what to say to me because that wouldn't necessarily be true. You only did it, you wrote what you wrote just so I can notice you and you get yourself an interview with me. So you need to be those are the biggest implications. Not knowing who's going to interview you, if they're going to grill you or not, or if they're just gonna let a few things, fly by. So it's not like we're gonna say to you, oh no, your CV mirrors exactly what we've advertised and so forth. Maybe you could be the perfect candidate. I can't shoot you for that. But we will see when I get to ask you the questions, and when you answer, it will tell me if you know what you're talking about or not. Wagu, are you answered? Are you clear?
Yeah, clear. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Now, although we had mentioned, or rather, before I address interview skills, let me just backtrack and talk about cover letters, because I know we had said that we'll address CV writing and cover letter writing. Now,
Salani,
yes.
I don't know if you want to take another question. There's a hand.
Okay.
If not, I can just ask them to come back later.
No, it's okay.
Temba Mzankomo, can go for it.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm having a question here. So I want to ask regarding my CV in relation to the interview. Although now Salami was about to get much into the interview skills and all those things, but I want to understand that. Let's say, for instance, I'm not that outspoken. I'm not good in orating, or rather speaking about myself or speaking in front of people and all those things. How does that disadvantage me? Although my CV, my skills that are needed for that particular post are relevant, good. How does now my performance at the interview, sitting there getting questions, and then how does that translate to me being successful or not when I relate it to the CV and how I perform on my interview, basically.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I've got two answers for that. The first answer is Smart Help Consulting, and you will find out who Smart Help Consulting is very soon. The second answer for that is I will touch base on that in terms when I go through the the interview skills. So what happens is, okay, let me just give you a brief answer, and then hopefully I'll answer your question when I address the interview skills. So it is also dependent on the panel that you're dealing with, and in terms of what they're looking for, the organization itself, and the role itself. So you might find that, yes, you're a person who probably doesn't articulate well, or you're finding it difficult to express yourself in that interview room based on the nerves, based on your personality as a person. But if, for instance, the role is in IT, wherein you won't get to talk to anybody most of the time, you're just going to be sitting behind your computers, fixing them, and responding to a query here and there. They might not necessarily penalize you because maybe you're finding it difficult to express yourself, because the biggest question should be, should there be a system error, or should computers decide to shut down, will you be able to fix it or not? So it depends on the panel that you'll be addressing, the job in itself, and the organization. And sometimes you can be lucky enough to have had other candidates who would have, should I say, done far worse than you feel, because you wouldn't necessarily know how the other candidates did. But I'll address further those your question. I don't know if you are answered at this moment in time, or if you'd want me to still address it. Is he on mute?
Is the question directed to me?
No, it's directed to the candidate. I want to know if he wants me to still address it.
No, it's myself. Yes, I'm sorted.
Okay.
I'm answered. Yes.
You
Thank
answered. Okay. Okay. So I feel I should mention at this stage the reason why I said Smart Help Consulting is because as part of the things that I do, I also do coaching and mentoring in situations like that. I have packages that you can sign up for, and I'll help you not only with just your CV, but I do the works. But I'll explain that at the end in terms of how I get to assist with that.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Interview skills. So now I've explained to you what your CV should look like, the things that you need to include, the things that you need to be mindful of. I've shown different templates that are being used out there. And before I continue or get into this interview skills, there's just something that I thought of that I feel I should just mention. Back to the search engines that I used. Sometimes it is important not to only write in terms of addresses. If you're going to write your address, it's not always where you have to write your PO box, this and that. There are times wherein we search for candidates who are in Gauteng or who are in Krugersdorp, Fourways, and so forth. But if you have written PO box, this and that, go, 146, unfortunately, I won't be able to pick up that location. So rather, when it comes to location, sometimes it is safer to say Midrand, Gauteng, or Western Cape, Bloemfontein. Try to mention those cities or those towns that are known, so that should your the company that you're applying for be one of those that uses systems, and also try to feel for the recruiter as well. Can you imagine looking at a CV? Yes, this perfect candidate. You are told that you need to fill this position in the next 2 or 3 days' time. You look at the address that's written there. You really need to interview that person like immediately. You call them and they say, I come from Kobo or wherever. There's no way that I can come to your office right now. So writing your location in the sense of Gauteng, Bloemfontein, Midrand, and so forth is also helpful. So back to interview skills. I've picked up 3 common questions that are asked in interviews, and those questions are: tell us about yourself, your strengths and your weaknesses, and do you have any questions for us, or do you have any questions for me, depending on how many people are interviewing you. These 3 questions seem like the simplest questions, right? I mean, what's so difficult about you telling the panel about yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, and all that? Let me tell you, these questions are not easy. This is what we see all the time when these 3 questions are asked. When everything is asked about your job, where did you work, your duties and all, most people don't sweat. It is these 3 questions that have people sweating. It is these 3 questions that become a make or a break for an interview. I'll start off with the first one. And I chose this phrase specifically, the special expression, because most of the time this is what I get. I say to a person, tell me about yourself, and they take a while. I find myself asking myself, are you taking forever because you're still taking a breather, or you really don't know how you would describe yourself? I literally find myself asking a lot of questions regarding why candidates always are shocked when they're asked this question. Okay, so usually most people, when asked, or rather, is there anybody who is brave enough to just do a test run with me or answer this question and just give me a brief summary about yourself? Is there anybody who's brave enough? Do we have hands raised? I should also mention that for those who are job seeking, I am willing to offer one of my packages for people that will be volunteering in this section. So are there any takers?
Yes, we have a hand from Mahlatsi.
Hi, Mahlatsi.
Hello.
Mahlatsi.
Yes.
Can you please tell me about yourself?
Okay. My name is Mahlatsi Fortunate Mahasha. I'm a 23-year-old. I'm a 23-year-old. I'm a vet graduate. I'm a vet graduate in Bachelor of Science degree, majoring in biochemistry. I'm also an honors graduate from vet, and I currently reside at Tembisa. And
Mahlatsi, can I stop you right there?
Yes.
I should also mention that you are in an interview room next and you are applying for an administrator role. So please tell me about yourself, Mahlatsi.
Okay. For an administrator role.
Yeah, that's the position you're applying for. You came for an interview, I've greeted you, welcome, I've given you my water and so forth. You are done breathing, you are calm now, and I say to you, tell me about yourself.
Okay. Okay. My name is Mahlatsi Mahasha. I'm a 23-year-old. I'm a 23-year-old, born in a family of 5. I reside in Tembisa currently. I've recently graduated from the University of Johannesburg with a Bachelor of Administration.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Are you done?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mahlatsi.
Salani, we also have
Yes?
another hand from Beatrice.
Beatrice, is it a question or are you volunteering?
I'm also volunteering.
Beatrice, thank you for volunteering. You will tackle the strengths and weaknesses for me. So I'm giving you time on that one. Okay. Are you good, Beatrice? You good, right?
Yes, I'm good.
Okay, no problem. It's still the same role. You're just going to tell me, you're just going to tell us about your strengths and your weaknesses, but you're applying, it's the same position.
Wait,
Okay.
can I get a brief explanation about what is an administration role, please?
Admin. My company does recruitment and I'm looking for a person who does admin. It's a recruiting company and I'm looking for an administrator. That's the job spec.
Okay, so should I go now?
No. We're dealing with Mahlatsi's question right now. When we're done, then I'll tell you to go ahead and tell me about your strengths and your weaknesses.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So we've all heard what Beatrice said, right? Mahlatsi said. She said she gave me her age. She told me that she's a graduate, she's got honors, and she stays in Tembisa, and she's done her BA, right? What Mahlatsi has done. Oh, and thank you so much, both of you, for volunteering. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down what Mahlatsi has given us so that everybody can be able to understand some of the things that I will say. And to all my volunteers, please do not take it as a personal attack. I'm here to help you and for everybody to be helped as well. And of course, you get to get a reward. So what Mahlatsi has given me is, like I said, she gave me her bio in terms of her age, where she stays, and she's mentioned her studies, right? And the fact that, okay, she's relevant for my role because she studied BA. But that, I can already tell you, half of that information, if not all that information, is already on Mahlatsi's CV. And mind you, Mahlatsi is sitting in front of me because I've already received a CV. and I already know what she's told me. So what I'm trying to say to you guys is, when this question comes, it is not there for you to only mention the stuff that's on your CV in terms of your age or the fact that you're a graduate or the school that you went to and so forth. We would have already known that information. What I'm looking for is more of, yes, that information, you can touch base on it, but you must continue with that information and say, remember, it's an admin role, right? You will then say, hi, I'm Matlatsi. I am 23 years old. I'm a graduate. I've done my BA and so forth. I am a type of person who enjoys organizing things. Remember, the role is being admin. You need to think of the role and ask yourself, what does an administrator do? When I received this advert, what were the things that are listed? So, what you must do in order to stand out is think of all those things, think about yourself as a person, and match the two. So, you will mention things like, I'm a type of person who enjoys organizing things, I like order in my life, stuff like that. That will tell me that you are not only a perfect fit for the role, but you're a perfect fit for my organization. So when we say tell us about yourself, we've now established that career wise, you are perfect. In terms of the role, yes, you can do the duties, you can do the role because you've gone to school for it, you probably have the work experience for it. But now, I need to know as a recruiter if you will be able to work with the people that are in that company, for instance. Remember, I know the individuals in that department, I know their characters, I know they're people who probably like talking too much. And when I'm looking for somebody, an administrator in this role, because I already know that Upita, John, and Sandra already like talking too much, and I wouldn't want to add onto that. I am looking for probably a person who will do my administration work, do everything on time, and not necessarily add on to whatever headache that I already have if I feel like they're already a headache. Basically, what I'm trying to say is sometimes when we ask this question, we're looking for job fit, we're looking for culture fit. So when you answer this question, you must mention things that will support the role, support the department, support the job in itself and the organization, and also make you stand out. So, Matlazi, with what I've said and explained, do you want to try again and tell me about yourself? Matlazi? Matlazi, are you there? Anybody to give me an indication that you guys are still there?
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
Matlazi? Do you guys understand what I'm trying to say? Anybody can answer.
So yes.
Okay.
So I feel like what you're explaining is that we don't necessarily have to repeat the information that we're already given you on our CV. So we need to give you in relation to the post that has been advertised. How is my personality fitting with that? So that's what I got from your
Yes.
explanation.
Yes.
Thank you.
Beatrice, are you ready?
Yes, I am ready.
Don't worry, I don't bite. I don't bite. I'm here to help you.
Okay.
Strengths and weaknesses.
So for my strengths, so I believe that I have a number of like key strengths and qualities that can be useful for this role, for the role I'm applying for. I am highly organized. I can plan tasks effectively. I can work alone and also in a team. Um, I'm also a strong communicator, and both face to face and also via email. So I feel like I can contribute positively to the role that I'm applying for. In terms of my weaknesses, I feel that because of sometimes I am a multitasker, but sometimes I feel like I can take too much work that maybe I can handle. But I have learned from the previous mistakes that I've made from the past, and yeah, I think that's it.
Okay. Thank you, Beatrice. Yes. So you've given me your strengths and you've given me your weakness. Now, with strengths and weaknesses, when you decide to mention something, it needs to be something that you can flip, right? I'll start off with the strengths that you gave me. Yes, you said you know how to plan tasks, you are a good communicator, you work well with a team. That is a good strength, right? And you also mentioned, as you were mentioning your strengths, you then said you feel that this would contribute to the role. So what you've done there is good. You've mentioned the strengths that even if I wanted to, kind of shake you up, I wouldn't necessarily want to dwell in it. But if I wanted to probe you further, I would rather suggest that if you're going to mention any contribution that you're going to have in a role, at least mention one aspect. One aspect either from the ad itself or your understanding of the role. For instance, because you've mentioned that you know how to plan tasks and that is one of your key strengths, you can then elaborate further on it to say that in terms of, planning, you are one person who you understand how important admin is in a company, or not even in a company, but in a department. So what you do is you prioritize the things that you need to do and make sure that all the important, tasks that need to be done for the day are done. That emphasizes the planning task skill that you mentioned, Beatrice. So which is good. In terms of your weaknesses, yes, you've picked a weakness, and the good thing about the weakness that you've picked is that you've also mentioned that you've learned from it. But you forgot to mention how you've learned from it. It's a good thing that, yes, you're saying to me, dear recruiter, I've noticed that I have a problem of taking up too much work. Because already at the moment you say something like that, I now have to ask myself, oh my gosh, will she be able to? Because remember, I know the workload. You don't. Will she be able to finish? Will she be able to cope with things like that? So if you're going to pick a weakness, and this goes for everybody, when you pick a weakness, you need to pick a weakness that you'll be able to turn around into a strength, or mention to the recruiter that, yes, I've realized that this is something that I struggle with, but this is what I've also done to make sure that whatever weakness I have doesn't sabotage me in me doing my job. So you mentioned, yes, taking too much work is good, right? And then you said you've learned from it. Then my question back to you is, how have you learned from it, and what have you done to make sure that this doesn't happen again? Beatrice?
Okay, so I would say that I have learned to be realistic with what I can do, and actually to also plan in advance, to say on this day I have to finish this, on this day I have to finish this as well.
Yes. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, that is how you attack the strengths and your weaknesses. And also, I feel I need to mention that when you pick out your strengths and your weaknesses, also think about what you've said when you were describing who you are as a person. Those three things, your strengths, your weaknesses, and you mentioning who you are or describing yourself, should not contradict each other. You cannot say that I'm a very shy person, I don't like talking too much while describing yourself. And when we come to your strengths and your weaknesses, you say that one of your strengths is that you are very confrontational. How does a person who says that they are shy and don't like talking to people on things like that now then become confrontational? I know it happens that people who, when they are annoyed, they can just, go off at you and all those things. But looking in terms of the numbers, that percentage versus the rest of the people, it's a contradiction. So when you describe yourself and you are asked about your strengths and your weaknesses, be mindful of what you've said in all those questions and ensure that it doesn't contradict the type of person that you are. Are we together?
Yes.
Yes. So I'll recap. When you pick a strength and a weakness, pick something that you'll be able to tweak, something that you'll be able to explain and not shoot yourself on the foot. Something that will leave the recruiter understanding that you understand the type of person that you are, and that you understand the type of employee that you are, and you must leave them with less questions. Now the third question is, do you have any questions for us?
Salani, there's
Hello.
also a question from Mwako and Mahlatsi. So I don't know if Mahlatsi, that's an old hand, but Mwako, you can go first, then Mahlatsi second.
Hi. So in terms of the weaknesses, what if I get tempted? What if I get tempted to say that I don't have weaknesses? So how would you as a recruiter view that kind of comment?
I've heard that before. And my question back to the candidate was, are you telling me that you are perfect? And the candidate looked at me like I was crazy. Because there's nobody who doesn't have a weakness. Are you literally telling me that I've met a perfect employee? Are you telling me that should I decide to take you, I shouldn't expect that you will make mistakes? Because remember, I'm not only asking you on a personal level, I'm thinking about the job itself, the department, the organization, and so forth. Are you saying that should we bring you into our organization, our culture, and everything, we will never experience errors with you? You get me? So, Nwako, you saying that you don't have weaknesses, personally for me, is shooting yourself on the foot. You need to pick something. And also, when you pick your strengths and weaknesses, think of the job that you're applying for. You can't say in a job wherein they expect you to work with people and you say your weakness is you are very grumpy, you don't like talking to people. Already you've written yourself off. Because now I'm going to ask myself, how are you going to handle the people that I need you to work with? If you say to me, my weakness is, I'm not a morning person, hey, honestly, I come alive at 12 o'clock. Are you saying to me I should expect that you're not going to be productive between 9 and 12 or 8 and 12, and then you will only come alive then? So you need to be careful of the strengths and the weaknesses. And with strength as well, as much as a strength is good, it can also not look good depending on the role. Let's say your strength is you decide to say, look, I'm a type of person that prefers working on my own. If I need you for a role that you're probably going to be reporting to 2 or 3 people and you need to take directive from them, I now need to ask myself if you'll be able to take instruction or not. You guys get me? So you really need to always, when answering these questions, think about the job itself, what you have applied for. Think about the type of company and the department that you're going into, and select strengths and weaknesses that will complement or balance everything off. Hence, I have that picture there. you must have a balance between your strengths and your weaknesses. Waku, are you answered?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Can I move on? Are there any other hands? Okay. Now with the last question. So I have this picture here because, believe it or not, there are such questions and even odd ones. Do you guys see anything wrong with this question or not? Anybody? Is this an okay question to ask or not? I don't think.
There's a hand from Matati.
Okay.
Well, I don't think it's a good question to ask because it can send the wrong message across.
What type of message?
Like, where did the previous manager go? As if, it's like he's saying that it may send the message that there's something wrong with the current manager, or you just prefer the previous manager over the one that's here now.
Yes. So such questions are asked by candidates. One that I've been asked in particular was a candidate who said to me, when I said, "Do you have any question for me?" or questions, she said, "How did I do?" I said, "I beg your pardon. I don't understand your question. Repeat, come again." She said, "How do I do? How did I do?" I said, "Why are you asking me that question?" I decided not to dismiss her because what I do with most of the interviews that I have, I don't dismiss people. I try to probe so that, I can lead you to the direction in which I feel you're trying to get to and make you feel comfortable. So I said to her, "Why are you asking that question?" And her answer was very sincere. She said, "I've never had a job interview before. This is my first one. So I want to know how well I did." That was an okay question, but she asked it at the wrong time. Yes, she wants to know how she did because she would want to have feedback, right, in terms of how she did. But that's not a question that you ask at that moment in time. Questions that you would want to ask, or questions that I enjoy being asked, are questions that have got to do with the job, for example, itself. Let's say, fine, I've mentioned the fact that it's an administrative role and all those things. There's always a part wherein recruiters will want to explain to you the type of company that you'll be working in should you become successful and so forth, or the role in itself and, how it fits into the whole department and so forth. The example that we're using is that, okay, fine, it's a recruitment company and we're looking for an administrator. Let's say I've explained that, look, I'm looking for a person who will be able to do my admin while I'm at work and all those things, and I give you the whole history. In that type of situation, I would appreciate a candidate who would probe me about something that I've said about a job. For instance, because I've mentioned that I would want somebody to be doing my admin while I'm at work and things like that. If a candidate was to say to me, "Okay, will I be required, for example, to be at the office, at whatever particular time, or would you want me, should I become successful, to come, only 2 times or 3 times a week to do the admin?" How much admin do you have? How often are you out on the road? How many people are already in this department? Such questions that show that you have been actively listening throughout the interview process. Yes, fine. I know a lot of people, when you give them a chance to ask you a question, they are quick to say, "If I'm successful, how much will I be paid? What's the salary?" Of course, at the back of our minds when you go for an interview and all, you want to get the job, you want to get that money, but don't make recruiters feel like you were literally just sitting there and being grilled so that you can ask that pressing question for you. Remember, your CV would have done 50% of the work. The rest of your interview would have done 40% of the work. And that last question, those few questions this one is your last 10% to either make sure that you become a memorable candidate or not. So try to probe in terms of things that have been said throughout your interview. If they've mentioned systems, for instance, and like SAP, most companies use SAP, and you're a candidate that has never used SAP, or you only know about SAP, but you haven't done everything, a lot of work when it comes to SAP. You only know, one or two things. You can ask them in this department, you mentioned SAP. In this role, how often will I be using SAP? Because I only know how to do a purchase order, or I only know how to do a purchase requisition, and that's it. What other things will I be expected to do in this role? This shows that it's not just, don't make it about you. You need to make the recruiter feel that as much as you would have added value in my life in terms of giving me a job and a salary, I also want to add value to your organization, to your department, and so forth. So it needs to be a give and take, because the recruitment space honestly has changed. It's no longer about recruiters sitting there and waiting and just picking anybody that will just be suitable for the job, or somebody who will just do the job. We're looking for, yes, somebody who will be suitable for the role, and somebody who will be able to do the job, but at the same time we want somebody who will be able to add value in the long run. It's a give and take type of relationship. So when you get to this section, as much as you have those pressing issues that you would want to know, like things like, hey, when am I going to start, when I'm successful, because that's also one of the common questions that are asked. Start off with questions that show that you are really interested in this job, you've been actively listening, you want to compare what they can give and what you can offer, and then, if there's enough time, you can then ask those questions if you really feel that you need to know. Are we clear on this one?
Salani, I think there was a hand from Mwako. I don't know if the question was answered.
Mwako?
And then also a second hand from Zankoma as well.
Okay. Okay. Any of the two can go ahead and ask.
No, thank you. So, I wanted to ask with regards to asking question. Let's say do you have any question? And then I say no, I don't have a question. Doesn't it somehow feel so rude that I'm not open for conversation or any discussion on wanting to know more? Will not jeopardize that relationship that I could have built there in with a partner or anything. Doesn't it seem rude to say no?
It is. You're absolutely correct. I would expect a candidate to ask something. There should be something that you want to know. Even if it's you asking how many people are in my department, even if it's you asking about something about the company, I will then ask myself, didn't you do your research about us? For instance, do you really have nothing to ask me? Even if it's not about the job, you don't want to know about the company, you don't want to know about the starting times, such things. So guys, always make sure that you ask a question. Always ask a question. If it's not going to be about the job, make it about the company. I've realized that your company is interested in environmental factors and going green. What are the measures that you have taken as a department to ensure that you run with that goal? You understand? That's a person that has not only done their research on the job, but you've done your research on the company as well, and you are showing engagement and interest. By the time you walk out of that interview room, trust me, they are gonna remember you. More especially when you come with questions that are not common. Because as recruiters, we already know you're probably gonna ask about the salary. You're probably gonna ask about the start date. You're probably gonna ask about the working hours. But you need to bring your A game because remember, you are not the only applicant. And yes, I saw your CV. It was attractive enough. It had all the information that are relating to the job itself. But now you need to sell yourself. How are you going to sell yourself? If I'm seeing 10 candidates, what's that one thing that you're going to say or that one statement that you're going to say that will leave me going, yo, I think I need to recruit Tumago. So if you don't manage to salvage that moment throughout the interview because maybe you were still nervous and all those things, with the last 10% that you have, kill me with it. Make me remember you. Mwako, are you good? And everybody else?
I'll assume I assume I'm more now, but this was
sorry. Tim, I'm so sorry. You and Mwakune, I'm so sorry.
Sometimes you don't see who's raising the hand.
Yes, I can't see. Yes.
No, but that was okay. I got the, I'm
got your answer.
Yes.
Okay. So, as I conclude this wonderful presentation that we've had, it is hard to look for a job for those that are looking, those that are trying to get into the job market, and for those that have jobs currently but you're not happy, whether it's the salary, the environment, or whether you feel like you're being abused and so forth. Keep going. Keep going. Keep applying. Whatever tips I've given you today, go use them. I hope you've written down everything that you needed to write down. But if you haven't and you feel like, you know what, Sani, I still need assistance here and there. I want to be a successful candidate. I want to be memorable. I want them to look, hire me on the spot. Because it does happen. I'll make an example with a recent shift that I did in terms of work, moving from one company to the next. When I was done with my interview, only after being hired did they then tell me that, because obviously they asked me if I had another offer elsewhere and all those things, and I was open enough to say yes, there are other companies that would want to recruit me. Apparently what happened is when I left that boardroom, when I got into my car and I drove off, they Googled all the companies that I mentioned because they told themselves that, look, we got to get this lady in. That is what you're supposed to do. You must be memorable, because keep in mind, every applicant would have used words like, I am hardworking, I am this and that. Trust me, all those things, the last candidate that would have been in that room before you has probably mentioned those words like, I am hardworking and things like that. You need to bring your A game. You need to bring something different, something that makes me have sleepless nights and hope that nobody, recruits me except for me. So if you want to be such a candidate, you want to be that successful, you want companies to fight over you and so forth, look no further. Smart Help Consulting can assist you with that. So apart from such programs, what we do is we have packages wherein we help with CV writing, mock interviews. With mock interviews is what you guys just experienced with the 3 questions, wherein we literally have an interview. Obviously, we would have checked your industry and whatever job it is that you're looking for, and we'll ask you questions that are related to that job and prepare you, for that next interview, because we would have worked on your CV, so there's no way that they won't pick it up. We will work on those mock interviews. We will assess you, and like the questions that was raised by somebody to say, what if I'm not well spoken and all those things. As part of my bio, it was mentioned that I'm a psychologist as well. So I can also assist in not only prepping you for a job, but whatever assessments that we would have done with you or whatever work that we would have done with you is not something that will only help you in the interview room, but it is something that's going to help you in the long run in terms of how you communicate with other people out there, how you communicate with fellow employees once you've become successful. All right. And then those are our packages, our personality assessments. We also assess you. We're not necessarily going deep into is there something psychologically wrong with you and all those things. We don't go deep into that. We assess you in terms of the working world. You know, what are your strengths? What is it that you need to work on as an individual? If you've done an assessment and we've picked up that probably you don't pay attention to detail, how can we help you in terms of what we've noticed as part of the things that probably you might be struggling with, knowing and unknowingly so those the packages there. The website is also there for you to go check it out, or for you to book your appointment with us and my team. And there's also a WhatsApp number there as well for you to, should you want to know further information. Now, for my two wonderful ladies, so what they're going to get is the standard package as their price. That is Beatrice and it starts with an M, Mahlazi. Yes. They're going to get the package. That's their price for volunteering. That is the mock interview, assessments, and coaching. So I'm going to help them with that. And then as an extra, Mwaku featured a lot as well in this presentation. So Mwaku, I will help you with your CV and see what it looks like right now and see what we can do with that to make it more marketable. So I will leave you with this few words. What I'm going to say to you guys is, when you look at your CV, see it as a pre-interview before the actual interview. Look at it and ask yourself, if it was put on a billboard, would it be a fair representation of you? If it's not, then we're here to help.
I would like to ask about the importance of a LinkedIn profile, and if recruiters actually use it to find candidates.
Okay. LinkedIn profiles, I know I'm one of those. Actually, it's as if you were listening on earlier on when one of the team members here was saying that they searched for me on LinkedIn and they didn't necessarily find much. And I was telling them that I didn't necessarily update my LinkedIn, but based back to your question, LinkedIn profiles, I've seen them being used on, it's like case dependent in a way, and it depends on sometimes the role. Let's say I'm looking for a project manager with 10 years of experience. I wouldn't, as much as yes, I would advertise on Indeed and all those things. Such people are mostly found on Indeed. You literally have to headhunt such candidates. So having an updated LinkedIn profile helps in instances wherein a recruiter has decided to say, look, I'm already receiving over 1,000 CVs on PNet, Indeed, and all. I want to literally go and use a fine comb in looking for a candidate. That's where in things like Indeed come into play, and the type of profile that you've put up, whether it's updated or not. So it depends on the role and how high it is. For instance, if I am looking for an administrator right now, honestly, I'm not gonna go the Indeed route. I know I will find most people, if I put it on PNet and Indeed and all those things, I know I will thrive there. But if I'm looking for somebody with 20 years of experience with this and that qualification, then I really need to use a fine comb. And one of the tools to use is what? Indeed. So yes, it helps to have an updated one, but also it depends on the role and the recruiter themselves and the method in which they choose to use.
There's another hand from Eric.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Host. I wanted to ask, are there any short courses or free certificates which you can recommend that can look good on our CVs in any criteria?
Okay. Also, it goes back to your kind of industry. If you are in the industry, for example, engineering field, having things like Samtrack can help you. Being a person who has, or being a millwright qualified type of engineer, such courses can help you. If you are in the accounting field, things like having, I know, yes, you guys do a little bit of bookkeeping and all those things, but having to go in depth into one of the key factors that makes a good candidate in that role is the type of courses that you need to ensure that you align yourself with and get for yourself. So you need to look at the industry in which you are in. You also need to look in terms of the future. Ne? Sit down and look at what you have at hand and ask yourself, will my qualifications or whatever knowledge and skills that I have right now be relevant in the next 2 or 3 years? If you are in IT and you only have C+ and not C++ and all those things all those numbers that I see, obviously if 2 CVs had to land on my table and there's somebody who has C+ and there's somebody who has C++, I'm mostly going to consider the one who has the higher pluses versus the other one. So you need to look at the industry in which you're in, look at the changes that are happening within the industry, and go find courses that will complement. As those changes happen in your industry, you will also be upskilling yourself. So look at your course, look at the industry you're in, look at how it's revolving, and how you can, Eric, align yourself with those changes.
Okay.
Are you answered?
Yes. I am.
For new entries and all, what you can do, varsity students, if you've just qualified in all those things, it is helpful to do things like Excel. Excel, I know most companies use a lot of that. If you can do that, having such courses will help you, because at least you have the upper hand. And that's the thing with Excel. I'll give an example with one of the roles that we had. We didn't just necessarily look for a person who says, I am advanced in Excel. After the interview, for each and every candidate, we had a laptop ready for them, a spreadsheet and all. We said, manipulate all the data that's here. And trust me, we saw things, eh? People had written I'm advanced in Excel, which is the danger of, most templates that we use. You just pick 5 stars. I'm good with this and all those things. You will come across recruiters who are like, you know what, I don't want to take your word for it or what you've written. I want to see the practical aspect of it. So what's going to happen then when you said you're advanced and I give you a test immediately and I say do it and you can't? Eric, are you good?
Yes, has been answered. Thank you very much. I wrote it down right now.
Okay, no problem. Sure, I see a few hands here.
Nzankomo's question as well. His hand was.
Okay.
So thank you, Tsepo. What I want to ask now is, in most of the advertisements of jobs and posts and all this, I see this phrase, driver's license will be an advantage. Driver's license, driver's license. How does that? What impact does it have in especially when I apply for a job? How much of advantage? What is the advantage there in having a driver's license, especially when I look at, for instance, an office work or something like that related to that. What I know is that to be in that space dealing with certain issues, with those issues along those borders, that me having a license or being advantage to me. How is that? I'm failing to understand how is that my advantage.
Okay. Now with driver's licenses, sometimes yes, they ask for those things because they understand that with this role you might want to go up and you might have to go up and down. Sometimes in adverts they do write it out that maybe you'll be expected to travel to go here and there. Sometimes they don't write it out. Sometimes the reason why they say it's advantageous is because they look at the type of um, department or company that they have, and they look at the fact that looking at the workload or whatever it is that they do, sometimes people leave late and things like that, right? So that's wherein you hear them saying that it would be advantageous for you to have your own, vehicle sometimes, because they already understand the role that you will be playing in that department. Sometimes you'll be asked to use one of the company cars and go deliver, let's say, a tender document here and there. If they hire you and they're looking for a role that includes you going up and down, once they've given you that car, like they've hired you, they've given you the car, and then they're like, okay, fine, Nzamkomo drive, and you're like, ish, I don't have a driver's license. It complicates things for them. So that is why they say it is advantageous. Sometimes they are willing to let it slide, depending on the job spec that they have or what they want you to do in that role. So that's the advantage of having one.
No, thank you very much. Now I'm highlighted.
Yes. But it's not just one of those wherein most of the time they just say grade 12 is needed and all those things. Sometimes they really they are gonna send you an errands and all those things. They know how they've structured the job. So if they say something is advantageous, they're looking at the things that they might need you to do outside what is listed on that job. Okay.
Chaya's hand was up.
Yes, thanks. Yeah, thank you. So, just a question on the CVs. Can the length of one CV be seen as an overkill? If so, on average, like what would be an acceptable or an okay-ish number of pages you can have for your CV?
That's why in one of the slides I mentioned that you need to put in information that's relevant, right? Let's say, for instance, you're applying for which role can I use? Okay, you're applying for a role as an accountant. I don't know why I love accountants. To be an accountant, but at some point in your life you were working at, it needs to be something different. Let's say at some point in your life you were working at Spare, serving food, and as part of that role all you did was to serve food. There was no counting of cash and things like that. If whatever job that you've done is not necessarily relevant with whatever it is that you're applying for, you don't necessarily have to list it. That's how you get to reduce the number of pages. If you feel that the content you are giving won't necessarily help you or back you up in that job, then don't list it. Because there are people who have done so many different things before they could actually get the job that they really, wanted to do in the first place. So if all those jobs that you've done do not connect to the new one that you're applying for, you don't have to. And I know there are people who say that, well, I list everything else so that it can look like I have that 5 years of experience. If you can mash up all those jobs and they give you 5 years experience and it is relevant, then yes, you can, easily say you have your 5 years of experience. But if you're going to be talking about hospitality here and there, you're going to be talking about what you did at this and that church and so forth. If it's not going to help you in any way, remember you need to scrutinize your duties. If there's nothing that's not gonna help you, then don't put it in your CV. But if there's aspects of all those different jobs that kind of relates to the new role that you're applying for, like I said, an accountant, you were working at Spare, but you were doing the cash count and all those things. At church, you were secretary and you were responsible for the journals and administration of that money. Now you can link those two jobs with the current role that you're applying for right now. You understand?
Yes, I'm answered.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, so and then
relevance when it comes to your job application. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. And just that last question, like on average, what would be an acceptable number of pages you can have for a CV?
Some people say 2. Some people are okay with 3. Some people are okay with a 1-pager. Remember, you must, apart from how your CV looks, don't forget that it's being received by somebody on the other end. What's happening in their lives? Am I recruiting while I'm under pressure? Did I see your CV first thing in the morning? Am I coming across your CV sometime after lunch? Or is it knock-off time and it's one of those situations wherein I've opened this email that you sent me and something happened and I found myself reading the next one? Think of the context of the person who has to receive your CV as well when you're doing it. Is it something that you would want to read? If you have 7 pages, honestly, if you were a recruiter, are you really going to go through those 7 pages or 4 pages?
Yeah, absolutely not. But I think.
Yeah, so you must position yourself, yes, as a job applicant or a candidate, but also try to think of the person who will receive your CV as well. That also helps, being mindful of that.
There's a hand from Mr. Mkonto as well.
Okay. Mongani?
Oh, yes. So, Salani, for me, it goes back to what you just said now. So the question is, do situations dictate the length of your CV as well? So let's assume I saw a role in a newspaper, or let's say on LinkedIn. Obviously, there's a lot of application that are going to go through, so the length might matter. But now, if I'm headhunted and I'm sending a detailed CV, doesn't that become an advantage? Yeah, or it doesn't matter? So that's my question. Salani, on mute.
I forgot. So, as I was saying, relevance is important, right? And the information that you give out is important as well. So, I'll give an example with what happened with me with one of the jobs, wherein, yes, I was headhunted. When I spoke to the recruiter that I spoke to, there's some information that I felt wasn't relevant with whatever job that they wanted me to do. But in this case, then the lady said to me, no, man, I personally remember when you're being headhunted, recruiters at times have just this candidate or those few candidates that they really, really, really want the employer or whoever to see. So she says to me, these people are caught between you and the other candidate. You have the same thing, and we are having a debate about the both of you, and we're looking for a differentiating factor. So you see, now there's information that's being told to me. That's when I had to give something else, one of my experiences that made a difference. So in that situation, giving more or being asked to give more worked for me, versus coming across a recruiter who says, they will sort themselves out when they get there, if it's a tie. You get me? So we can't ignore the fact that regardless of how our CV looks and how we've done those interviews and so forth, we're still dealing with human beings who have perceptions, who have their own frame of references and their own thinking.
Thanks for that.
Okay.
It's clear.
Yeah. Okay. So can I please ask the two ladies to text me? The two ladies, Beatrice and Matlatsi, please don't forget to text me on the WhatsApp number that's written there. I am going to have a few questions for you guys, which I already know, that I will know if it's you guys or not. If you fail to answer those questions, yeah. But please get hold of me.
All right, thank you. Will do.
And our guy. I'll be handing over back to you, the program director.